what he does. We cannot see the doer, but we don't even know who does it. That's beyond our knowledge. Now I cannot go into that. That is a whole sheer why we cannot know him. And for those people who know, if you're interested in that, we have very critical review takes on that. But when we look at God, when we try and understand him, we look at how he operates, what he does. And essentially, when we talk about what he does, there's a key word which is called hanhaga. Hanhaga. Hanhaga means activity or behavior. You see. And what we're concerned with is the hanhagas habore, the behavior of God. You see. Now, what do you mean by the behavior of God? What's that? Nohag means to conduct, to lead. Yes. Hanhaga means a behavior or a way of conducting oneself. Right. Comes from the same root. We're concerned about the hanhagas of God, his behavior, the way he operates. Now, how does the Bereshit operate? We've laid down certain critical principles, and just briefly, the Bereshit operates in certain ways. There are two critical criteria in terms of the hanhagas. It's very important to know this and to understand it. One, when the Bereshit operates, means that when the Bereshit wants to do something, how does he do it? The Bereshit does not have a guf. He doesn't have a body. He does not have a force. It is not anything we conceive of. We do not know how the Bereshit actually does something. It is a being beyond the way we conceive of existence. The way we understand the Bereshit operating is the following. His hanhaga is essentially called a Shefa or a hashpah. The word Shefa means an influence or a power, you see. The Bereshit doesn't actually have a power the way we understand it. If he wants to do something, he wills it. He merely wills. He says, let it be. Let there be light. And suddenly there is light. Suddenly there is an actual existence. Now how it goes from the will of God to the actual existence, we do have some idea, which we discussed before. It has to do with the nature of God's existence. But what happens is that when the Bereshit wants something and he wills it, it is. He creates what's called a Shefa or an influence. It is an influence or a direction or a power. It's some kind of a power or a koyach, you see, which he projects. Now he doesn't actually project it. Again, figuratively. We can only talk in those terms. But in a certain sense, the Bereshit projects the power from his will. And that power emanates from him and then goes ahead and actually does the thing. It's a creative force itself. It itself, the power itself, has the innate capacity to create, to build or to construct. That's called a Shefa. Let me just finish this idea. Okay. Another word that we also use is called an or. The word or means light. And we say the Bereshit projects a light. It doesn't mean actually projects a light like a light bulb. But since we cannot understand God, we try and understand something about how he does something. We look at him in terms of the only substance we can understand that is not him, but it's the most ethereal or subtle substance that we know, which is light. You see. So we say that the Bereshit exudes or illuminates a force, as if you exude light. Now these are all metaphors. Make no mistake about it. These are metaphors. These are just examples, these are figures of expression that we use to describe him. But that's essentially how he operates. He projects a force or a Shefa. Now, what's very critical is that every Shefa that the Bereshit produces has a specific objective. It's not just a force, a chaotic force. It is a force designed to meet a specific objective. You see, it has a purpose to it. It has what's called a tachlis. The word tachlis means purpose. It has a purpose. You see. So his hanhaga, his behavior, are composed of two aspects. One, it is a force, and it is a force, a creative force designed to meet a specific objective. That's really what the word hanhaga means. It implies both of these features or characteristics. There is nothing which is done in all of creation, nothing in existence can be in any sense unless it comes from the Banishim's Hanhaga. Since He created everything, there is nothing that exists if He doesn't will it. And since His will manifests itself in Hanhaga, in a behavioral mode, in a force that achieves a certain objective, that's where it comes from. You see. So therefore, everything which exists in some way relates to His Hanhaga. Now, the Banishim has different objectives, or he may have several different objectives that eventually will interact. Each objective with its corresponding power or force is referred to a different Hanhaga. You see. So the Banishim can project several different behavior patterns. You see, you may say, for example, what does that mean? Like a person can be angry and a person can be sad. Right? You can see, but he has two different aspects to him. Now the Banishim is not angry or sad in himself. These emotions don't exist in him. But he can do certain things that would mimic someone who's angry or sad. For example, let's say Chas v'Shalom, someone has a misfortune. You see, something bad happens to a person. And he says, well, God was wroth with me. You see, God was angry with me, you would say. Now was God really angry with him? Did God feel fury? No, God doesn't feel rage. He's beyond emotion. But his Hanhaga, which came down, operated in such a fashion as to produce a negative consequence. So we say that God is likened to someone who is angry. You see. Now he had a reason for doing it. The Banishim has a reason for doing that, you see, for punishing someone. It's the same thing when a person has a certain mazel. We don't say God is happy as such, but rather the Banishim acts with me in a way that as if he has an appearance of being satisfied or content with me, you see. Hence, whatever happens in existence must happen to Hanhaga, and there are different types of Hanhagas designed to achieve different objectives. Okay, are there any questions at this point? Is this clear? It's very important to understand this. What I've done, these two criteria. Okay, yes, Mark.
Yeah, just wondering how the idea that whatever if God acts just by willing, how that relates to with Reishi, the saying that God said let there be light, letting God thought that God.
Well, God said, that's again a metaphor. God said, let there be light. That's a metaphor. He didn't say it. What do you mean he said it? God doesn't have language in the way we have. He doesn't talk. He said, who did he say it to? Who was it? Somebody who was listening to him? You see what I'm saying?
God said it's saying God's will.
Yes. In essence, it's a metaphor for God's will. Yeah. But how do we know somebody's will? When he says something, that's how we understand his will. But the Banishim doesn't say it. It's not a conversation. There wasn't a communication with someone. There was no one around. You see, it's his will, right? It's a metaphor for his will. I mean, God wills, let there be light, and there is light. Those mechanisms we've gone into, how that works, we've gone into in Series 1. And for those who are interested, who continue with little review some of that, we have some review sessions on that. It's very critical to understand how God operates. Okay, so this is the concept here. So we deal with the Banishim in terms of the Hanhagas, which are forces or projections of power directed towards a certain purpose. Okay. You may wonder, why am I spending time on this? Because what I'm saying is very critical. You must think of God in these terms. We don't do that. We always think of the Banishim in terms of a person, like us. We think that he's angry, he's sad, whatever the story is, he's subject to the same emotions that we have, and that's the way he operates. That's not what it is. The Banishim does not operate by emotion at all. Rather, the Banishim behaves in a certain way because of certain ultimate criteria. And it reflects itself as if you would have had this emotion. It's very important to make that distinction. The Banishim is known through a series of Hanhagas. That's him. Okay. Now, fundamentally, what we've said is that we've identified two Hanhagas. In everything which happens in the world, you see, there are two Hanhagas. And only two, really. One is called the Hanhaga HaMishpat, and the other is called the Hanhagas HaYichud. I'm not going to go into the details of this, we went through exhaustively and so on, but essentially, when we look at the activities in the world, we can discern two operations from the Banisham. Two activities. One is called the activity of Mishpat, the other one is called the activity of Yichud. That's what it's called. Now, the word Hanaga, we know what it means. It refers to a behavior or an activity towards a certain objective. The second word constitutes the objective. The second word after the word Hanaga will always tell you what the objective is. Hence, the Hanaga and Mishpat are those series of activities which emanate from God in order to produce the aspect of Mishpat. What is Mishpat? Justice or din. You see. The Hanaga Yichud refers to all those series of activities which emanate from God to produce the objective of Yichud. What is the objective of Mishpat? Well, again, without going into a long detail, what we said is essentially the following. The objective of Mishpat is to do the following. The Banisham wants to give everything that he created, and that's the reason why he created everyone. Toy, Hatava. Hence, the first Hanhaga, which emanated from God, is the Hanhagas Hatava. Really, what is the Hanhagas Hatava? Hanhagas Hatava means the behavior which attempts to do good. You see, that is the reason why he created the whole world. He created the Bria, everything that you see, to fulfill this Hanhaga. You see, but the immediate question that you ask, well, what is the objective of this Hanaga? To do good. What does it mean to do good? It means to have an existence where one experiences total joy. That's what the Hanaga, Hatava really means. It's a series of activities which emanate from God to produce the experience of total joy. Sounds good, but when you look out there, is there total joy? No. Which means that the Hanaga Hatava is not the key functional Hanaga. You see. It is only the first in a series of Hanagas. What the Banisham ordained was that, yes, I want to give Torah, but I want that Torah, I want that goodness to be earned. I want you to work for it, I want you to produce it, I want you to help participate in its production. You see. Hence, what the Banisham said is, I will create Torah conditionally. In the Hanagas Hatava, the Hanagas Hatava created all those things which give Torah unconditionally. The Hanagas Hatava only knows one thing: create the recipient, in this case the neshama, and give it Torah. That's all. That's what Hanagas Hatava does. It just does that. Those are the only things it has to do to fulfill that objective. That's all it can do. It cannot do. How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, we don't see you. Produce Torah. That's all it can do. It can't do anymore. It's designed to do this specific objective. To fulfill that objective, that Hanaga creates a being, a neshama, number one. It creates a being, a neshama, and it creates a recipient, the neshama, and it puts in a situation of Torah. That's all. That's all it does. It cannot do more. It's not contained within its inner design to do more. Now, the Banisham decided that that is not enough. The Banisham did not simply want to create a being and simply bestow incredible Tov or incredible joy, because that being would object. That being is such that being says that I can't do that. I don't want Tov without in some way participating in it or producing it. And we said that that's because of Nam Ksufa. We're not going to go to Nam Ksufa, but Nam Ksufa is the resistance that a neshama has towards the gift of total joy. It's a resistance. Where that resistance comes from, we discussed this. In any case, because of that, the Banisham said, well, if that's the case, I now have to do something else. I have to allow the neshama to go earn what I'm giving him. Hence, I have to create a whole situation. You see, in Hanagas Hatava, all I have to do is create a neshama and put it in a circumstance of joy, tov. According to Hanagas Mishpat, I have to create a circumstance not only for joy, but I have to create a prerequisite circumstance where the neshama can work and earn that joy. Hence, what the Banisham said, I have to create two different places in two different times. One, I have to create a situation which allows the neshama, in this case the person, to work, you see, to work and to earn this tov. That is called Olam Hazeh, this world as we see it. That's called the status of this world as we know it. Right now, we all live in something called Olam Hazeh. Olam Hazeh does not only mean this physical world, it also refers to the spiritual world. It refers to everything which exists at this point in time. The physical and spiritual world, the malachim, everything. Everything which is in existence now is technically called Olam Hazeh. And that world submits to the fundamental criteria of performance. Performance. We want you to do, we want you to perform. Hence, mankind is given the ability to perform, to earn, to create, to produce, to contribute. That's what this world is about. When this world is over and it's finished, you see, there will come another world, another existence, another mode of existence. It's a whole different way of being. It's hard for us to know what that is. There are ways to understand it. We've got to go through a lot more shul to understand that. But it's a different mode of reality. It's a mode where you no longer will be expected to perform or do. You see, you will simply be in a position where all you basically will do is experience one tov after another to the end of time. That's an incredible thing. In order to do that, it doesn't mean that God is going to put you in a position where there's no more evil, or no more stress, or no more discomfort. It means something else. It means that the very nature of your existence will change. Because it's not a question that you will not be asked to do a job. You will not be able to do a job anymore. You will not have the ability to choose. You will no longer have free will, you see. You will no longer have a yeton and a tov. You will no longer have those instruments, those tools which are necessary to go through the mode of existence called performance. These will no longer exist. What will exist is simply a situation of being which simply experiences the tov that you've earned in the original state of performance. And that new state is the mode of existence which goes on for all time. Even time itself changes. Time in that world is not the same as time in this world. You see. Now, who demanded that? Who did this? Who created, who split these two circumstances to achieve these two different objectives? The Hanagas HaMishpat. The Hanagas HaTorah cannot do that. The Hanagas HaMishpat did that. It created these two worlds to fulfill these two objectives. What is important to understand is the relationship of these two Hanagas. The Hanagas HaMishpat is really the Hanagas HaTorah in a conditional way. In other words, the original objective did not change. The original objective was that God wanted to do tov to this world. That original objective always remained the same. Except that pure tov, without any earning it, was not considered sufficient. Hence the Hanagas HaMishpat was created, or projected, you see, to make this tov into a stipulation that this tov will be given when the person earns it. Hence what was created was something called split din, justice. What is justice? Essentially justice means the following: a day's pay for a day's work. That's the essence of justice. In other words, if you do this, you earn it. You don't do it, you don't earn it. That's it. That's justice. Justice essentially is cause and effect. If there's a cause, there's an effect. If there's no cause, there's no effect. You see, if I pay you a certain amount of money a day or per hour, and I say I want a certain job done, if you do the job, you get the check. You don't do the job, you get no check. And there's no even a right for you to ask the check, because strict justice says it's conditional. I want to give you the check, right? And the check would be good for you, but it's conditional on your behavior. That's what Mishpat is. Mishpat wants to give the check. You see, the Hanagas HaTorah just gives out checks. That's all. That's really what it is. It simply says, oh, give this guy a $1,000 check. Do something. You don't have to do anything for it. Enjoy it. That's what the Hanagas HaTorah says. The Hanagas HaMishpat says, no way. You've got to work for it. And we've got to see if you work for it. We've got to set up an entire evaluation procedure to see whether or not you've actually worked for it. And you've earned it. If you have, by all means, please take the check. If you haven't worked for it, forget about it. Nothing is coming to you. Strict justice. Why? Because again, the Baruch wants you to earn it. Not as a gift, but as a reward for actual performance. at the world. Does the world really run by justice? Do evil people get punished and good people get rewarded? No. Many times we see evil people getting rewarded and good people being punished. We see all kinds of contradictions, you see. Hence we realize that the world must be run by a different Hanhaga. You see. It's not enough to say that the world is run by the Hanhaga Satava. If the world was run by the Hanhaga Satava, if this is the way God related to His creation, everything you see, every experience that you would have would be total joy. If the world was run only by the Hanhaga Mishpat, then what would happen is things that you do will be compensated quickly and exactly. You see. But these circumstances don't exist. Hence what we see and we understand is that it's obvious that the way the Bereshit guides the world is through another Hanhaga, and that Hanhaga is called the Hanhaga Yichud. What is that Hanhaga about? Well, that's a very big problem. The Hanhaga Yichud, as I mentioned, is a very deep Hanhaga. It's a very difficult Hanhaga to understand. But essentially, what we must discuss is certain basic things. We want to discuss number one, and this is what brings us up to today's share. Okay, that was a quick 15-minute review. Getting better and better, these reviews. Like, the truth of the matter is, these reviews are getting to be so good, you don't have to come anymore for any of the other shows. Just show up for the reviews. Yeah. Yeah, what? When? At what point? It started out as, there are two features to Hanhaga. The general definition of Hanhaga has two features to it. Purpose and power.
Right. But then right after you finish that, you said that there were
three types of Hanhagas with respect to purpose. No. Again, the general definition of Hanhaga and the general properties of Hanhaga refers to power and purpose. P and P. Okay? The specific types of Hanhagas which exist are three in number. You see. And the first one, the Hanhaga Satava, is really only a theoretical Hanhaga. The only two Hanhagas that actually have been expressed in the world is the Hanhaga Mishpat and the Hanhaga Yichud. The Hanhaga Satava has never really existed by itself. As soon as the world was created, it was instantly fused with the Hanhaga Mishpat. There was never a position in this world where there was no split in. Never. Hence the Hanhaga Satava is really more of a theoretical Hanhaga. It was never an unconditional thing. Yes?
Be specific. Did that merge? Merge the commencement of creation, or did it merge when man was created?
At the instant creation.
Even before man.
Before man. At the instant of
Why
creation.
was that? If there was no man.
Because it was.
Some kind of mirror.
Because the neshama because it was understood.
The neshamas were created in the.
But the neshama is the result of Hanhaga Satava directly. It's the recipient, the told. And the internal design of a neshama is Naham the Sufa. Automatic resistance to pure Torah. That's how the world was created at the beginning. When the Hanhaga Satava, so to speak, created the neshama, it was created with the problem of Naham the Sufa.
The neshama wasn't created on the sixth day.
No, not now. No, what says there by Yipach Va'apa, God, the Bereshit breathed or put in the neshama into the body. That man was created in the sixth day. Man was a combination of neshama and guf. Okay. No, let's say it. God created the world. At the outset, the world was already in the mold of performance. Everything was geared ultimately for the Nisayon of the Adam. You see, from the outset, from the beginning, the Bereshit right away started creating the whole union of Yetzirah Hara and Yetzirah Torah, even before he created man. You see, the Bereshit was involved in creating the different forces, which would then allow man to begin to choose and begin to earn. You see, but these was created at the outset. You see,
before man was created, and even after he was created, before he was commanded to, restricted to eat, I don't see any Hanhaga plus myself.
You have to distinguish. I see your confusion. When I say Hanhaga Mishpat, Hanhaga Mishpat is a design principle.
It's not necessarily.
Hanhaga Mishpat doesn't mean that Hanhaga Mishpat does not mean once you've done the crime, we put you in front of the bed and in front of the court and say, well, let's see what you did. That's not what Mishpat means. Mishpat means the subtlety. Hanhaga Mishpat means that God created the world in the mode of performance. In other words, so that to give man the opportunity to be tested and tried, you see. And then should he fail or pass, he will be judged. Mishpat does not mean adjudication. You see, I don't see no difference. It doesn't mean an actual judicial process. What mishpat means, it means a mode of existence where a person would be given the choice of doing something as not.
Even technically it's not relevant.
Even it's not, yeah, I mean, at the beginning the Baruch was already creating all those features and all those elements were necessary in that type of a purpose. And Tanakh Mishpat started at the outset.
I just thought that was the whole philosophy of the between before and after the Chet.
No. Well, what the big chilek before after the Bria, before and after Chet is the Hanukah Yichud. See, but even that's not true. But because Hanukah Yichud is also an eternal design principle. But we'll leave that go. As far as we're concerned, the Hanukah Yichud is what distinguishes. And let me explain what I mean.
So when was the Neshama created?
At the outset, right away. And the Neshama was right away created and given performance. Right away, at the beginning. You see. What? At the beginning of creation itself, at the first ray of existence, the first ray of existence was in the mode of already dealing with Nam Nesufa and performance. Right away, at the outset, you see. There are reasons for that. Who? At the outset. Right away. Well,
before they were created.
I mean, not before. Well, I think the Baruch created the world in 6 days. What did he create in 6 days? In 6 days, he created the physical universe, essentially, and also the spiritual universe. Everything that we see and which exists was created in 6 days. Everything. When the Baruch started the creative process, before the creative process, there was only him. He. And that's called the Ein Sof. That's what he, by himself, the Baruch was alone. You see. That's called the Ein Sof. God by himself. You see. Again, I won't define that. That's a whole technical phrase. We've gone into that. The Baruch by himself is called Ein Sof. There was the world of the Ein Sof. That's the world of God himself. The next stage, as soon as he created existence, as soon as there was a creativity, right? The first thing he did was to create existence or neshama and everything else with it, right? Plus everything else, right? That would have to do with earning its toll. Right away. The next jump from Ein Sof down was already a type of reality which is concerned with performance. There was never a type of reality which is concerned simply with enjoying, experiencing joy. Alone. There was no such thing. Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Okay. This is very critical. Okay, we have that. Now, given these hanogas, very nice. So the hanogas mishpat start out right away. Now, the big problem we want to know is this. And this is which the Shum are now going to be concerned itself. The hanogas hayichot, you see. Okay, now let me say at the outset that this is the most mysterious of all the hanogas. It is the most mysterious of all the hanogas. It is the least known. And when I say least known, I'm not only talking about myself and you people. You see. It is the least known by the Nevi'im. Moshe Rabbeinu himself only knew sections of this. You see. When Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Baruch certain questions, and the Baruch says, it is my decree. I don't know if you've heard the expression. That's my decree. That was his answer to Moshe Rabbeinu when he asked him certain questions. You see. That is the Hanogas HaYichud. Which means that the greatest of all prophets can only get a glimpse to some degree of what that is. The Hanogas HaYichud has been a deep mystery almost throughout time. We have been fortunate that Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto and some of the people in his time zone have begun to reveal this. It is knowledge of this Hanogas that separates the men from the boys in Hashkafa. If I may use the phrase. That's really it. That's really what it does. And I mean, even though I say it somewhat humorously, but I mean it in a very profound way. The number of people that understand that on Haggah and understand its operation, I don't know if you could number them on your fingers in the entire world. Really, to understand this. Because it is on Haggah which is kept secret. Why? Why is it kept secret? Why does the Baruch do that? Why does he keep this Hanoga secret? For one basic reason. Who can venture to say why? No. I understand what you're saying. That's not what it is. No. Why is it kept free? It's a very funny answer. Why?
Yisurim.
What?
We need the Yisurim for Mashiach.
Well, but why is it kept hidden? Why is it that God does not reveal to us how it works? Very basically, very strange answer. Because if we knew how it operated, we would know what? It would not operate. This cannot operate in the open. What am I talking about? Okay, what am I talking about here? Why am I saying this? This will become inoperative. You see, there's a very interesting medrash. You see, a very interesting medrash. I don't know if you've all heard of the 10 martyrs, the Asor Aruga Malchus. In the time of Rabbi Akiva, in that time, there were 10 very great tzaddikim. And what it was is that the Roman government under Hadrian proscribed the learning of Torah in approximately that generation. And what it was is that Rabbi Akiva and many others, of course, would not listen to him. So there were 10 of the greatest tzaddikim in Israel that were killed. Terribly, they were killed. You see. What happened actually? What happened was Hadrian called over, I think it was Rabbi Shmuel, and he said to him, the 10 brothers that sold Yosef, remember there were 10 brothers that sold your ancestor Yosef? It says in the Torah you're not supposed to kidnap someone, and they kidnapped Yosef. What did happen to those 10 brothers? You see, were they punished for it? So the time had to say, no, I mean basically, I don't know really what he answered him, but essentially he didn't give him an answer. So he says, in that case, someone has to pay for their blood. You will pay for their blood. I will take the 10 greatest tzaddikim of this generation, and you will substitute for them. You see. Now there's a very deep thing that happened over here. So Rabbi Shmuel was shocked. I mean, it's not a small thing. And what he did was, he did a very unusual thing, which only Rabbi Shmuel could do. What he did was, he said certain Kabbalistic terms, the Shema Forge, and he rose up into the Shemayim. He went up with his guf in the Shema. I'm not saying exactly how he did it, whether he went up with his guf, or just in the Shema went up. But it doesn't matter, because in any case, when he came back down, he remembered exactly what he saw up there, what he experienced as a neshama. You see, and he rose up there and he went to a very high place in the Shemayim. You know, I'm not familiar with the place and so on. It's called Me'achorei HaPargut. Obviously, and he went up to the Bezdin Shemala, not into the Bezdin Shemala, whatever it is, but he actually went into it was a court clerk. It's like on the closest description his name. And he said to him, what is this going on here? What is this, a real gzera? You see? I mean, is this a gzera from the Bonishon, or is this Hadrian's joke? Really? So the Malach said, no, you must accept this, because this is a gzera from the Bonishon himself. And the Malach said, you must accept this, O beloved ones, 10 tzaddikim, because since the time of the 10 brothers of Yosef, there has never been found such 10 tzaddikim as you 10. You see, and that's me. I'm an extraordinary compliment. But the compliment came with a price. Forego the compliment and keep the life. But in any case, the point was that's what the situation was, and that's what he told Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, and Rabbi Shmuel, he said, why? What is it? Zeri Mefonai is a decree from before me. So he went down there, and 10 of them were killed. Now, why did Rabbi Shmuel ask? Because the truth of the matter is, those 10 Tanoim didn't have to submit. They didn't have to submit to Hadrian. You don't know who these 10 guys were. These 10 Tanoim knew enough Chokhmah that they could have, with their knowledge of Kabbalah and so on, they could have wiped out the Roman Empire overnight. This was no small thing for them. You see, in fact, what happened was, even when the brothers went into Yosef, and when the brothers, if you remember the thing, when Yosef said they didn't know that it was Yosef, and then Yosef took Binyamin, they didn't want to give him back, so Yehuda approached, and essentially what Yehuda said to Yosef, either you restore us our brother, or we wipe out Egypt. What do you mean you wipe out Egypt? There are only 10 of you here, you see. Okay? Because they were able to do that, and it's not physical power. And look, if Shimshon, if Samson was able to destroy the Plishtim, if they were able to pick up Gizor with a jawbone of a chamor of a mule, kill 10,000 Plishtim. Shimshon was not necessarily stronger than these, and their krichas came from a supernatural force. But they know when they have the thing, so when Rabbi Shmuel knew that they could overturn this Hadrianic thing, this was not a big thing. When he went up to the Bonisham and he said, the Bezdin Shemala, he said, wait a minute, you tell me, can we overturn it? So the Malach says, no. When he not only said that the Bonisham has ordained it, but he said, because he's ordained it, you no longer have that power. You're impotent. The revelation was not whether we will overturn it or not. You have no choice anymore. You must accept that. Because the power that you would have had to overturn it is now in the hands of the Romans. They have that power. You cannot do it. hence they were all killed. And these some stories that are related that one of them, the first one that was killed actually was Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. And what happened to Rabbi Shmuel, when he was being killed, what happened was is that the very strange thing is that the Romans cut off his head, the top of his head, with a knife. And as they were cutting the top of his head, and they hit the mokum of the tefillin, the neshama of Rabbi Shmuel gave a tremendous cry in the world of neshama. And it was so enormous and powerful in terms of what was going on, I guess because of the din, is that the heavens itself shook, and so on. So the Malachim turned to the Bonisham and they said, what is this? This is Torah, this is Torah? This is Torah, this is reward? That's the famous expression. Zu Torah, this is the Torah, this is Torah, and this is the reward? Is this the reward of a man who has so devoted himself to Torah? I mean, the man was an incredible tzaddik, Rabbi Shmuel, Kohen Gadol, with the Kohen Gadol of the time. So the Bonisham says to the Malachim, very even upon that, it is my decree. That's what he said. So the Malachim didn't apparently accept that. They said, but wait, why? And they kept on pushing for an answer. So you know what the Bonisham said? The Bonisham said the following. The Bonisham said, if you keep on pushing me for an answer, I will return the entire creation back to Tohu Vavohu. I will return all of creation back to before the first day, and everything will be wiped out. That's what the Bonisham said to the Malachim. That's a medrash. Very strange medrash. Why is this medrash strange? It's strange for a number of things. But one of the reasons why it's strange is, what was this dialogue between the Bonisham and the Malachim? I mean, really, what was this dialogue? You see, what were the Malachim asking, and what was the Bonisham answering? Well, essentially what they were saying is, we want to understand is, what is your anhaga in this way? What are you doing here? Why does he say tzaddikim have to die? So the Bonisham says, this is not the Hanagas HaMishpat. Your question of Zu Torah, Zu Chora, this is the Torah, this is the reward, comes from what premise? Which Hanaga? The Hanagas HaMishpat. Because you're saying, how can a tzaddik die like this? Well, what's the premise of that question? The Hanagas HaMishpat. What's the answer? This is not the Hanagas HaMishpat. This is the Hanagas HaYichud. This is a different Hanaga. That's what the answer is. Now, the Malachim kept on jumping up and down, and they still wanted to understand this. So the Bonisham says, if you keep on threatening me, I will destroy the entire world. I will restore it back to Tohu Vavohu. Well, what kind of thing is that? What was the Bonisham doing? Threatening them? You see, the Bonisham could have said to them, look, wait a minute, look, I don't want to answer you. Well, that's it. Case closed. But the Bonisham said, if you keep on threatening this, I will do this. Look, if a person asks a question, you see, and he wants to know an answer, well, you don't threaten him and say, you keep on asking him and I'll put you out of business. I mean, that's not an answer. So what was this dialogue? You see the question? Yes. What?
What's the answer? That's behind the whole creation. On Haggadah, so if you take away
the book, that's what we're going to explore. What essentially what the Bonisham was saying is the following. If I have to tell you what I do, you see, what's going to happen? If I tell you why I'm doing this, if I reveal to you the inner mechanism of Hanagas HaYichud, you see, not only you will know it, you see, but somebody else will know it. And if that other being will know it, it can no longer function. The Hanagas HaYichud cannot function, you see, if this other being will know it. Hence what it is the following. Who was the Bonisham concerned with about finding this out? Okay? What was the name of this being that the Bonisham did not want him to understand Hanagas HaYichud? What? No. Who do you think that was? Yes. The Satan. Who is the Satan? Well, the Satan is really a malach. He is a malach. But he has a specific function. His function, what's his function? He has three functions. First of all, he runs up to you and he says, hey, why did you do a chait? Come, let me get you to do a sin. So he offers you a nice Yetzirah, whatever it is, so on. And he seduces you and he says, come with me. So he gives you a seductive process and he tries to get you to do a chait. Let's say you fall in, then he runs up right away to the Bonisham and says, hey, you see that guy? To the Bonisham. He runs up to the Bezdin tomorrow, to the higher court. And he says to the Bonisham, you see that guy? You see what he just did? Well, that sounds funny, but that's not mean that's funny. I've seen it in one sentence. And then the Bonisham says, you're right. Go down and punish him. and he runs down and he punishes them. He inflicts pain. What kind of pain? He is the angel of death. He's the Malach HaMovet. So, it is the same Malach who does all three jobs. He is the seducer. In that function, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the shir I once gave a long time ago? In that function, he is called the Yetzer. Is that when I gave it?
Yeah.
In that function, he is called the Yetzer Hara. He is called the evil inclination. What's an inclination? This way. That's what an inclination is. That's why it's called the Yetzer Hara. Then, once he succeeds, he runs up to the Rebbeinu Shalom and he accuses the person. He is a prosecutor. He is the prosecuting attorney. That's right. That's his job. He doesn't run out there and rat on you. That's not what it is. He's not a stoolie. The point is, he runs up there because that's his job. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants him to run up there. In that function, he is called the Makatlik. Makatlik. Or Satan. The word Satan means to accuse. He runs in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom and he says, that man just committed a chait, which I of course seduced him. But that's my job, you see. Once he finishes, right, then the Rebbeinu Shalom says, go out and punish him. So when he punishes it, he is called then the Malach HaMovet. It's his job to go and take the person's life based on the accusation. You see. What a job. Now, why does he do this? Because he's mean? No. You know why he does this? He does this because we asked him to. You know who appointed the Sultan? You know who gave him these three jobs? We did. Not the Rebbeinu Shalom, we did. That's right. You, all of us in this room. Well, not specifically, you probably trying to knock your head and say, well, I must have been insane. I don't have enough source. Why? Because this function was created when the Neshama says, I refuse. When the Neshama says, I don't want this tov, I want to earn it. So what the Rebbeinu says, okay, have it your way. Well, how do you earn it? Performance. What performance? The Rebbeinu gives you a performance to do. He lets you choose between one way and another way. And he says, you choose, right? So, in order to choose two ways, you've got to have two different inclinations. The Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. Two different ways. Hence, it's a man's the Yetzer Hara. Well, once you have the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, we've got to see what kind of job you did. And it's his job to run up and tell us what you did. And if you did bad, that the Mitzvah Din says, no tov. You see. But we are the ones who told the Rebbeinu Shalom what to do, really. We said that we want Olam Haba, we want this future world only on the basis of what? Of productivity. You see, we're into a productivity contest here, and that's essentially what it is. We want our wages geared to production.
What did you
It's about management. Potential.
What did you say?
He said, well, when did I get this? Hey, I must have been drunk. I'll give you the contract with your signature on the dotted line. Okay? I tell you what you do. Get yourself a good lawyer and try and breach that contract. But that's your problem. Okay. But in essence, okay. Wait a minute.
God just set it up this way. I started to that we did.
No, wait a minute. Okay. We're begging the question here. The truth of the matter is, the Rebbeinu Shalom did set it up this way, in a sense because we asked him to set it up this way, but it's really an admixture of the two. The subtleties of Nama Sufa and its real origin is in a very advanced thing, you see. And the truth of the matter is, we really didn't say set it up this way. We're not suicidal, you see. But the truth of the matter is, in a way, we did say it. How that is or not is really it's a very advanced concept. I don't want to go into that. Except this, at this point, that in essence, we did set it up with the cooperation of the Rebbeinu Shalom. We did set it up. As soon as we set that up, instantly, this character was created. You see, as an agent, as a representative of that objective, which is called Mishpat. He is the essence, the essential agent who is responsible in a certain way to see that Mishpat is done. And he does it very well. Too well. But that's the point. Now, what happens? When a person does a chait, he runs up right away and accuses. He lets the Banishim know right away. Not that the Banishim doesn't know without him, but that's the mechanism, that's how it works. Okay. And the Mitzvah Din, the Din, must be such that it takes what? It takes its compensation. Because that's what Mishpat means. That's what Nam the Sufa means. You can't get around the problem of Nam the Sufa. It is a fundamental motif in creation itself. Okay. We got big problems. What's the big problem? The problem is, as I mentioned last time, that according to this scenario, the world is in big trouble. Because if the world has free will, and it's in a performance mode, it can destroy itself just as easily as it can acquire Olam Haba. Really. That's essentially what it is. Hence, the Buddha, what he wants to do is he wants to ascertain that in some way Olam Haba will be reached. You see. In some way he has to do something with the din, with strict justice, and in certain ways obviate it or remove it to a certain extent so that the world can remain in existence. Because the truth of the matter is, if it's left up entirely to the hands of man, man will destroy himself, as he's done a number of times. Hence what the Buddhism does is say, I will create now a new Hanhaga, so to speak. And this new Hanhaga will establish the fact that someday there will be an Olam Haba. Someday will be. That is called the Hanhagas HaYichud. Well, it looks that way, but it's not that way. Let's first understand the purpose of Hanhagas HaYichud, you see, and understand the mechanism. Obviously, the very intricate mechanism is not in terms of how it's done. So, the function of Hanhagas HaYichud is in some way to make certain, you see, that the world does not destroy itself through din. But in order to do that, the Buddhism has to have Hanhaga, which in some way transcends the Hanhaga which is connected to this operation. Hence, this operation, you see, is really an outgrowth of the Hanhagas, right? Hamishpat. You see, you've got to have Hanhaga which in some way will transcend this entire thing. That Hanhaga is called the Hanhagas HaYichud. You see, we will go into some of the aspects of that mechanism. I first want you to have a grasp of what the mechanism is and how important it is. Last week we went to a very dramatic approach, another way. We went to the same problem from a different angle. But this week we're going from another angle here. When the Malachim say to the Buddha, we want to know, you see, what kind of Hanhaga allows these 10 tzaddikim to kill in this fashion? The Buddha says, it is my Hanhagas HaYichud. You see. And then when the Malachim keep on saying, we want to see what it is, the Buddha says, I cannot tell you what it is. Because once I am a Gala, once I reveal this light, once I reveal the light of the mechanism of how this thing functions, not only you will know it, but this Malach will also know it. Once he knows it, it cannot function. Because once he knows it, and it's open in his eyes, correct? What happens is that the Hanhagas HaMishpat now prevails under all circumstances. Because there's no way that it can be hidden. And hence, this Hanhaga cannot operate. You see? So when the Buddhism says, if you keep on threatening me, I will return the world back to a state of chaos. The Buddhism wasn't threatening the Malachim. He was simply saying, if you keep on threatening me, then what happens is you will cause the Hanhagas HaMishpat to override the Hanhagas HaYichud, because then he will know it. Well, once the Hanhagas HaMishpat overrides the Hanhagas HaYichud, then the world must be judged on strict justice. If the world is judged on strict justice, what's going to happen? If the world is judged on strict justice, man will not be able to sustain the accusation against him. Hence the Mitzvah Din. The Din will require that the world be destroyed from the function of the Malach HaMavet. This third function of the Satan will prevail. And hence I will be forced to restore the world back to chaos. You see what we're saying? This is the way I'm telling you is a very unusual way to look at this medrash. And I believe that this is the inner depth of that medrash. That's really what the Buddha was saying. You will make it impossible for me to function with Hanhagas HaYichud, because it cannot then perform its override function. Being unable to perform its override function, the world will be restored to pure justice, which means that Satan himself will prevail. As the Malach HaMavet, he will then instantly destroy the world. You see. Now, we will go into this later on, especially in Series 3. But I will lay down this thing, were it not for the fact that those 10 tzaddikim died. You know when they died? They died approximately a little after the destruction of the Second Temple, about 70 CE. Actually, from 70 CE to about 100 CE, you see. Had those 10 tzaddikim not died, the world would have been instantly destroyed. This is essentially what it was. You see, this is exactly what it was. And Rabbi Akiva knew it. His death, and the death of all of them, you see, all of them, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shefa, Rabbi Chutzpitz, Rabbi Hanan ben Tarjum, Rabbi Chanina ben Chatinai, all of them, Eliezer ben Shamua, all of them, Rabbi Shefa, the whole bunch, had they not been killed, then the Midas Hadin would have prevailed and it would have insisted that the world be destroyed. So what did the Buddhism do? The Buddhism did not want to destroy the world naturally, so what he said, what I would rather do is exile the Jews for the next 2,000 years. This is 1986. We are in Gullus, going on 2,000 years. And what the Buddhism said, rather than destroy the world from the din, because mankind has sinned too greatly, I will put the world in exile, in Gullus. And what did he do? He destroyed the Beis HaMikdash and exiled the Jews to the Romans and the and so on and so forth for the next 2,000 years. The Buddhism chose exile, or what they call the diaspora, you see, instead of ibud, or destruction. That was the choice. You want to know why are we in exile? Because the choice at that point in time was either exile or annihilation. That's what the Midas Hadin. What was the big thing? What were they doing so bad at that time that it was worthy of annihilation? Well, that's another shir. But it had a lot to do with the way one person treated another person. It had a lot to do with that, you see. It had a lot to do with Lashon Hara. It had a lot to do with Gdela, and all kinds of things that went on from one person to another. It was obnoxious, it was obscene what was going on at that point in time. Hence, that kind of din that came up said, this is not a good world anymore, annihilate it. What's going on over here? You want these people to go into Elam Haba? So what the Buddhism therefore did was to take 10 tzaddikim of the greatest tzaddikim, you see, and by killing them before their time, in a certain way, a certain mysterious mechanism, he was able to assuage or calm the Midas Hadin. You see, how that happens is the inner mechanism, so that the Satan is blinded. When the Satan went down to kill these 10 tzaddikim, and he can only come, he's a Malach HaMavet. When he killed one of these 10 tzaddikim after another, he became blinded, and he stopped, and he didn't run after any other Jews. He was satisfied. His belly was full. How that works is a very deep process, you see. But essentially, this is what it is. He is a hungry thing, this Satan. He wants every Jew who's not worthy of Olam Haba. What the Buddhism does is it takes 10 of the greatest tzaddikim and fills his belly with these 10. And because he filled his belly with these 10, the Satan did not annihilate Klal Yisrael, but instead sent him to exile. Hence it was the death of these 10 which allowed the Golus to go on for the next 2,000 years. Why should it be such an amazing thing? Because the truth of the matter is, at that point in time, the Yemos HaMashiach was supposed to have started. That was a very critical period. We don't realize it. But in those days of Rabbi Akiva, do you remember there's a story about Rabbi Akiva and Bar Kokhba and so on? This wasn't just a tale. What happened was that the Jews at that time had reached a certain critical period, and that critical period was that they again reached, in history, there were certain critical periods, you see. We'll go into this much more exhaustively later on when we analyze the Messianic concepts. But throughout history, there are critical periods. And in these critical periods, it is a possibility to bring the Mashiach. It is a possibility. But that depends if the Jews are worthy or not, you see. So when those times come, the Satan runs up and examines the Jews with a fine tooth comb. Why? Because they're about to be given a bonus. You see, when you give a guy a regular salary, you let it go. But when the guy asks for a bonus, you begin to examine, well, wait a minute. You want a bonus? Let's see if you deserve your regular salary for a minute. You see, suddenly the judicial process becomes more clear, you see. The Jews at that time had reached another critical period of the possibility of Mashiach. Hence the Kidron, or the Mishpat, was much finer, and the Jews could not sustain it. Hence, if they couldn't sustain it, there was an instant kitrug of annihilation, an accusation of annihilation. What did the Buddhism do? He had to instantly assuage or tranquilize the din. And what did he do? He chose exile rather than annihilation. Who would have been the Mashiach? The truth of the matter is, when Rabbi Kiva Yosef says that Bachar was Mashiach, he was supposed to be the Mashiach. He was the actual person. Had the Jews been worthy, he would have been Mashiach. He would have been what's called the Mashiach ben David. And who would have been the Mashiach ben Yosef? Rabbi Akiva himself. He himself was the Mashiach ben Yosef. And it was a combination of this two that should have brought in Yemot Mashiach. Klal Yisrael was not worthy. So what happened? The Buddhism chose annihilation. And where do we see the Buddhism chose Golus? Where do we see this? Because the interesting thing is, in the Beit HaMikdash itself, in the Makam HaMikdash, on top of the Oren, you all know what the Oren is? There was a casket inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim in the temple itself, which contained the scrolls of the law. That's called the Oren. On top of that was a gold plate with the figures or the carvings of two angels, cherubim, you see. And what happened is there were two angelic figures with the face of a child and two wings coming from the back, and the wings extended. Now, the position of those wings indicated what God feels about the Jews at any point in time. And what happened is that if the wings are separated so that the wings go back like this, here was the Oren, right, with the luchas in it, right, and there were two malachim, right, and their wings go back, right, like this. When the wings were in that position, it means the world was under the concept of din. It means that Klal Yisrael was not good. There was a very strong accusation against Klal Yisrael, and the Baruch Hashem is angry with Klal Yisrael. So when the wings were like this, in this direction, towards each other, and literally two solid gold pieces were able to shift the wing positions miraculously with a net. That meant that's like both of them were hugging each other. You see, that indicated that the relationship of the Baruch Hashem to what? To these malachim was a positive one. You see, when Peter destroyed the Beit HaMikdash and he came in, right, and he ripped his way in and so on, and he opened up the Kodesh HaKadoshim and he saw the Oren, and he saw the Oren with the two malachim. What was their position? Really, they were towards each other. Why? You think that after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, they should be away from each other? Because what greater, what expression of din than what? Than the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash? No. Because it's the Hanukkah HaYichud that destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, not the Hanukkah HaMishpat. Had the Hanukkah HaMishpat destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, the whole thing would have been wiped out. Everything, period, including the Romans. You see, everything. But all that was destroyed was the Beit HaMikdash, and the Jews were sent into exile. You see, that was an expression of love. Golus. Hence the wings were in touch and towards each other. You see. Hence, this is some of the concepts. I'm trying to give you a feel for the Hanukkah HaYichud by some of its inner components. I'm not telling you how the mechanisms operate. This will be in successive shurim. But I want you to get a feel of what this Hanukkah is. What I want you to understand is what a Hanukkah is in general, number one. What are its essential properties? What the different types of Hanukkahs are, and two. And to some degree, how they interact. And finally, the interplay of these Hanukkahs constantly and what they mean to each other, and why it is that the Hanukkah HaYichud is a hidden and mysterious Hanukkah. Not because the Baruch Hashem is secretive as such, but because it cannot function if it's revealed. Okay. Any questions? So we have that clear? Good. Okay, Mark.
Before we were talking about the sudden and the reason that Hashem couldn't actually explain to the Malachim why he was doing it was because the Sutton figure would also know it. And what does it mean that he would actually know it? I mean, all he has to do is sit and watch his shurim or whatever is being taught and see it. Now, what does it mean that he would actually know it versus...
no one gave you shurim with that.
No, what does that mean?
You get certain channels.
There's a lot of information you have to know to answer that question, really. And like I say, I know, I always do that. No, but you have to admit, I give you a lot of information. I'm not skimping.
Yeah.
But again, at the same time, we must respect what's involved in that. That's a very profound question. What does it mean that the Sutton does not know something? And what does it mean that he does know something? Let's see if I can't see something so you'll be a little satisfied. Or should I keep the information mysterious? Like, I don't say yichud. No. But, there's certain things that he knows, certain things he doesn't know. What does that mean? He's privy. He's privy to the information which comes from the source of his existence. The Hashem creates things and he gives everything existence, including the Satan, which means that the Satan has certain power. He has the power to do things. But that power is very specific, you see. That power can or may not contain information, you see, for him and so on. For example, sometimes some individual may know something and you may not. Why? Why is it that he can know something and you cannot know something? What? Because obviously, information or knowledge is a individual affair. You can understand something and not someone else. It's the same thing with malachim. It is possible for certain malachim to know something and other malachim not to know these things. Because their inner source does not tell them those things, and hence they don't know these things. But obviously, for the Hashem to have revealed to all the malachim, you see, essentially what the meaning was of the death of these 10 tzaddikim will essentially give all the general angelic kochos that information, you see. Because once it's given publicly, it's one thing if information is hidden or given extremely privately, but once something is given en masse to a general populace, no matter what that populace is, whether it's malachim or neshamas and so on and so forth, you cannot exclude it, you see. You know what I mean? Like once the bird's out of the cage, it's out of the cage. Once something appears in the press, it's in the press. You see what I'm saying? Well, in a metaphorical way, that's also what already happened, you see. The Sultan did not know this information because no one knew this information, really. No one understood how these mechanisms really work, and so on and so forth. Hence the Sultan didn't know either, because this kind of information and the inner mechanisms of this life were not given to the Malachim as well. Even Moshe Rabbeinu did not understand it in a specific way. You see what I'm saying? And that's the whole thing.
So the only point that didn't answer for me.
Yes.
You talked about, you said it much earlier in Shurim that higher level beings were on different levels, and the higher level beings can tune into the lower level.
Yes, but this information is on the highest level. It can't.
What we have of it, the stuff we knows, but it doesn't affect it.
Put it this way. Whatever we know, let me put it this way. Whatever we know of the Yichud, and we only know a certain bit over time. The Ari, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who lived when he did, in the 15th century, knew an enormous amount about this Hanhaga. You see. He knew more than that than people hundreds of years before him. Why? Because by the time the Jews had reached the Ari's time, you see, let me just make this a central question here. Let me take your question and say something very important. You people don't realize the position that you're in. You really don't. You do not understand it. And I want to tell you something, a very, very critical thing. In many ways, we are the lowest generation of all. It's obvious. Look at what happened before us. Look at the great tzaddikim and baby Christendom. We are in a generation of enormous hector, enormous confusion and darkness. I mean, where do you see spirituality out there anymore? Nowhere. Where do you see ruchnius? Do we have a drive for spirituality really? Are we as into spirituality as we are into physical things? Not really. What happens? Why are we in such a low state? If we have a neshama, and that neshama comes from such a high place, why is it that we are so much into our guf? Why? You see what I'm saying? What happened? We are into our guf because of our sins. The more we sin, the more our guf takes over. Until we finally come to an era when we are so much into our guf, we almost don't even know that there's such a thing as a neshama. But, even though that's a disadvantage, in a certain way, there's something else. We may be the lowest generation in terms of level of spirituality, but we are the greatest generation in terms of something else. In terms of the level of tahara, or the level of yisurin, or problems that we went through. We've gone through 2,000 years of Golus. They didn't go through 3,000 years of Golus. We, means the nation of Israel as a totality, has gone through thousands of years of suffering and tribulation, you see. Things that the first Jews did not really experience in the same way. Hence, because of that suffering, we are privy to information which they were not, even though we are on a much smaller level. You see. Which means, now, just to give an example of this thing. The Ari knew stuff that the Ramban, Nachmanides, or the Maimonides, people before did not know. You see, why did he know this? Because he was greater than them? Not really, in a sense. Because he lived in a more opportune time. We live in the worst time, but in a certain way we live in the best time, you see. Because the truth of the matter is, we have access to information which the greatest Gedolim of Klal Yisrael did not have access to 50 years ago. Do you know that? It's astounding. You see. I cannot prove it to you now, but I'll give you one small example of what I'm talking about, although it sounds like ridiculous. There was a very great man in the 1500s, his name was Rav Shimshon Mastopolia. He was one of the greatest tzaddikim in the world of his time. He was just about the greatest of the Kabbalah to this time. And the Ari once said something, you see, the Ari once said a certain thing about Pesach. He wrote certain things about Pesach, about how Pesach happens. It was a Kabbalistic thing. And nobody understood what the Ari wrote. It was an essay that he wrote about what happened in Pesach, the Malachim and the Shema, certain things that were done there, and no one understood what the Ari was talking about. No one. The greatest Mekubal of the time, who lived maybe 100 years after the Ari, did not know what he was talking about, you see. He died not knowing what he talked about, really. One day, in the next generation, he appeared to another great Mekubal, Rav Shimshon Mastopolia, you see. And what it was is that he revealed to this Mekubal what that letter meant. He told him what? After the Ari died. Yeah. He revealed to this person what that letter really meant. You see. And what did that person do? That person wrote it down. You want to find that out? You can go buy it for $2.50 in any store and understand exactly what the Ari said. You can buy it for $2.50 with the greatest Mekubalim did not know at the time of the Ari. Can you imagine that? Isn't that ridiculous? The biggest Mekubal of Shimshon Mastopolia did not know this. You can buy it for $2.50. Just get the Haggadah Shapesis with the letter in the back of Shimshon Mastopolia. That's what it is in the dream that he revealed. Now, why? The answer is, that's what I'm saying. Because it's one thing has to do with how great the neshamas are. We may be small neshamas, but we have something. We are purer than they are. We are not holier than they. They were holier, more kodesh, but we are pure. We are cleaner than them. Our neshamas are much cleaner. We don't have any refuse on our neshama. We have very little refuse on our neshama, even though it's very small. You know, for example, you can go into a room. You can go in two rooms, right? One room, and let me give you an explanation, and something we will go later on, but it's important to understand there's two words. There's a word called Kedusha, and then there's a word called Tahara. I don't know if you know, Kedusha means holiness, Tahara means purity, cleanliness. You see. What is the really difference between the two words? Let's say you walk into two different apartments, or two different houses. One house is incredibly designed. It's like the furniture there, and so it's elegant, sophisticated, whatever you want to call it. It has the most expensive furniture around. The other apartment is like, you know, mid-Manhattan style, whatever you want to call it, just basic, you know, basic furniture and so on. The difference between the two is one is elegant and one is mediocre. That's the difference in Kedusha, you see. But, let's say you walk into this elegant house, and even though it's beautiful furniture, the place is a garbage heap. You see, it's got incredible furniture, but there's garbage all around, and the place smells. It's dirty, it's unkempt. No one has cleaned the place in 3 years. You walk into the other apartment, and it's immaculate. But it has less furniture, it's not as what? As sophisticated. That's the difference between Kedusha and Tahara. Kedusha refers to the elegance of the interior. Tahara refers to the purity or the cleanliness of it. You see what I'm saying? Two different concepts. We have gone down from generation to generation in elegance. We have gone up in purity. They may have been more elegant than us. Their neshamas were much greater, but their neshama was not as clean as ours. Why? Because they have not undergone the enormous amount of service that we have gone through. Do you know what it does to go through a Holocaust? Do you have any idea what it means to lose 6 million Jews? Can you imagine what the neshama, the general neshama of Klal Yisrael is, if you look at it in totality? Do you know what that does to the neshama? Do you know what kind of cleanup job that does? Do you know how much refuse that takes away?
How can we be so attached to the physical if we're so attached
That's a different point, because that has to do with Kedusha. That has to do with Kedusha. The elegance of your neshama indicates how spiritual or how physical or material you are. That's one thing. But there's something called tahara. There's something called purity. And we have this kind of purity. Now,
Some manifestation of it?
I don't want to go too deeply. These are very deep concepts, and I just want to bring ideas. The ability to know deep information lies with tahara more than with kedusha. Hence, generations which exist now, even though we're at the bottom of the total pole in terms of elegance, we have access to information which is shaykh or can only be known by people long time ago on very, very high madrigas. You see, that's what I'm talking about. You see, that's what I'm talking about. You see, in other words, these concepts are the dominating principles. They determine the kind of information which is given to Klal Yisrael and the kind of information which in general exists in reality, both to the Satan and to all the Malachim. The balance of these two things is the fundamental determinant of the amount of information is given about how God runs the world. You see, let's leave it at that general look. A more deeper look will take, it takes a while. But I think we have the general idea. Okay? Okay, that's it. That's the end of it. Okay.